Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker. Welcome to episode 180. Being assertive means using your voice. Well, welcome back to this month, which has been all about what we need to be assertive. We've talked about getting needs met in healthier ways, setting boundaries with others, and the necessary detachment work to feel and communicate in a more peaceful, grounded way. Today, I want to finish up the month talking about how to put all the pieces together, how they actually all work together, and where you need to do the most work. Then we will talk about scenarios where to start practicing using your voice to honor yourself in all of your relationships. Okay, so you've heard me this month talk about how the key to assertiveness and confidence is your insides matching your outsides. Your inner voice matching your outer voice. So there is congruence in who we are. I know that sounds like obvious, but for a lot of people, they don't have that congruence. They have a big mismatch between what's really going on the inside and what they convey to the outside world. Okay, so if you've been listening all month, you know that we identified some areas in order to do some work so that you can become more assertive and for that to become more of who you are as a person. One of the things we talked about was healing. And so when you put all the pieces together, you know now what you need to heal in terms of your inner voice. You've identified, for example, how your family, although mostly loving, could also shame and guilt you rather than being direct. You realize that this has an incredible impact on your self-esteem, so this is going to take some work to heal. There is going to be cognitive work around what you will tell yourself, how you view yourself, and how you treat yourself. There's also, I think, going to be emotional work healing that old verbal trauma. I think this is grief work, and you should grab some therapeutic help around doing this. Don't try to do all that by yourself. If there is trauma, then therapy is highly recommended, individual or group. Knowing this will be a process too, and that it's going to take some time for you to do. You can't rush that, and you don't want to. Maybe you've identified some early trauma, such as a tragic loss or sexual or physical abuse. Maybe severe verbal abuse and manipulation by your parent or older sibling. That's more common. Bullying at school or in the neighborhood. Don't minimize bullying. A lot of people try to step over that. That was how they survived when they were younger. You really want to look at how acute that might have been and the damage that it did. Maybe living in a high crime area when you were younger, where you were always having to be on alert and perhaps were privy to awful things happening around you. Severe weather events and accidents that happened. You know, trauma takes many forms and I think has different levels of severity. We know that the earlier the trauma, usually the more it shaped you. Getting this witnessed, validated, and walked through with is an incredible way to heal and make real what happened to you. You no longer have to drag it around like a 10-pound weight. It no longer has to, what they call trauma inform, it no longer has to really inform or overly influence your sense of self, and therefore your sense of self in your relationships, and therefore your ability to be confident and assertive. Because it will do some damage. There is no stuffing it away, guys, and stepping over it. That's a lie. Maybe you've identified that you need a coach for boundary work and communication skills. My experience has also been that the other parts that you work on have their own healing qualities. Even if they're not directly related to the trauma, it doesn't matter. And for example, first noticing what doesn't feel right in your life, and now applying your understanding of boundaries and why. Like when you get anxious or angry around certain people, probably because they're good manipulators in my view, or they're just passive aggressive and therefore not emotionally safe. You're going to understand now why you are irritated, and it's probably because others are trying to tell you what to think, feel, or do, or they're judging that. So they're blurring their boundaries with you. Boundary work also looks like setting limits to honor yourself, like saying no to rescuing someone, or something you just don't have bandwidth for right now. Boundary work looks like asking for help when you're really too busy or too heavy. Maybe you tend to overwhelm yourself, and maybe some of your boundary work is A, getting more realistic about what you can really handle, and B, learning how to ask for help and to delegate appropriately. Another part of boundary work we don't talk about enough is self-care. So maybe you've identified some great self-care that you need to start doing to love yourself. You know, guys, that makes up for some of the hurt and the neglect. You caring for yourself, you nurturing yourself, taking good care of you is taking responsibility for yourself, but it also validates that you deserve it and that you need it. Like maybe a hot bath, a long walk, a day off, maybe cleaning your space, paying your bills, maybe getting organized so you can find your shit. All of that is self-care. Another area is relationship goals. Maybe boundary work around, again, not rescuing, not caretaking, not allowing other people to define you. So making your own decisions, not always going to everyone to see what their opinion is, starting to listen to yourself more. So being more interdependent with some healthy autonomy and differentiation in your relationships might be a goal. Another goal might be not being that person to get all up in their business and focus on them so you ignore yourself. There's a million ways you can, identify big and little areas in your relationships that you want to get healthier around. Okay, let's go inside for a moment. What about things to do on the inside of yourself? This is a big part of assertiveness. First is looking at changing perhaps some of your distorted beliefs, and these could be ones you're conscious of or not conscious of. Either way, you've heard me say, they're driving the bus. They are driving your behavior. Our beliefs and values drive all of our behavior, whether we are conscious of them or not. Let's say you've identified that maybe fear drives all or most of your beliefs about yourself and about life and maybe about other people. And now today you're starting to realize that they have really limited you over the years and probably even impacted your relationships. For example, who likes to be around someone who is a negative person or closed-minded or rigid? Maybe the way you secretly believed how you could never do anything big in your life now that you're older, like it's too late, as if that ship has sailed. How do you know that's true is what I want you to start asking yourself. And you better do some damn research and prove it to me. Yeah, when you're older, you might not be able to go for the Olympic gold or run a marathon, but you can do a lot of other things. The distorted belief that you can't not use that law degree now that you've finished it, but maybe you're miserable at your job, and maybe you thought it was going to be something different. Or maybe you did it for reasons other than what was true for you. Like maybe your family wanted you to go into law. Or that just because your sibling gave you this sense growing up that you weren't capable of fabulous things out of what I think is their own jealousy and lack of self-esteem, it doesn't mean you aren't. In fact, it probably is quite the opposite, hence the jealousy. There isn't jealousy in acting out and trying to push someone down if someone doesn't feel threatened by your capabilities, perhaps, your talent. So looking at distorted beliefs and how they have been shaping your life, and what do you want to do about that? Because you can change them if you want to. Another area of the inside is your emotions. Managing your emotions appropriately. One of the big things about assertiveness I don't think we talk about enough is the emotional maturity. Yep, I said it, emotional maturity that is required to come across in a non-threatening, confident, and an emotionally safe manner so that people want to be around you. Not defensive, reactive, manipulative, or passive-aggressive in any way, shape, or form. Guys, that stuff pushes others away. We know it pushes us away when other people do it. It makes us look 5 and actually prevents us from being able to problem solve. Because stating your truth in a healthy way is actually pretty vulnerable. And vulnerability is where the truth is. My personal opinion is that we can only do real connecting, real negotiating needs, and put people in a loving place of choice when we're being vulnerable and authentic and talking about what's really going on. Not saying to someone, I can't believe you're late again. Instead, honey, I worry about you. I need you to be on time or at least text me that you're on your way. And again, big self-care. Big self-care. We can't feel confident if we've neglected our own needs. You're pretty much saying you don't matter. You come last. Just ignore your body and your mind and what your psyche needs. Ignore your heart. Conversely, when you begin to honor yourself more with some good sleep, some downtime, some play, some connecting time, some learning and growing time, some planning time, some get shit done time, you actually begin to take your power back. When you don't, they out there, that out there, it out there hold your power. Then you're a hostage to and a victim of. Then you don't own anything, and we can't feel confident and assertive if we don't take responsibility for our well-being or our choices. We got to pick one. Either we put it out there or we hold on to our power. A lot of people don't talk about how, and they're embarrassed to admit, that they're afraid to grab their power because they're afraid they're going to F it up. They don't know how. It's scary. What if they don't do it right? What if it brings unexpected things in their life? Because here's the thing. If you're always focused out there, that's a control issue. That's a fear of letting go and allowing and letting life show up. So a lot of fear work to be done therapeutically around that. Okay, so that's some of your inner work around your thoughts and your feelings and your self-care. What about doing the voice work? So now that you kind of know what some of the aspects are of assertiveness, now it's time to put things into practice. And you don't have to have all the work that we just talked about done before you start practicing using your voice. Most people aren't anyway. It's going to start coming out before you're ready, probably, and it won't look pretty, and that's okay. Your psyche's like, we're not waiting any longer. We need to do this. All right, so working on your actual voice. First, you have to believe in you. You can't put it out there to another person that you have a healthy need, a healthy boundary, you want to negotiate things, if you don't believe yourself. If you don't believe you deserve things and that you're smart and you're capable and you're creative and you're talented and that you trust what you think and feel and need is valid. So work on affirming yourself in whatever areas you've identified that you struggle. Try to keep them solution focused, create some new beliefs using positive and possible, not definite, not absolutes. We're not controlling outcomes here. We're just trying to focus on our intentions, which is very different. Intention means I'm going to decide how I show up to a situation. I have no control over what's going to happen. Statements like I can, or can certainly try and see how it goes. I can figure out a plan B if not. I want my life to honor my values. I think I know what I'm good at. I want to put it out there to the world. Life is too short to not speak up. I want to stand up for myself more. Let me do a little bit and see how it goes. Maybe I'll start with small boundaries with safe people and get stronger from there. All right, so affirming your intentions and affirming things you want to try, then gather the evidence and see how it goes, instead of shutting the door preemptively out of fear and saying, I can't do that. Doing the voice work also obviously focuses a lot on your communication, like how you communicate, how you convey is everything. Using I statements. Keep it about you. You hear me talk about that a lot because it's very important. Make sure your agenda is clean. Like you're not trying to get the other person to do or be or feel something. If you're doing that, go back to the drawing board. You're manipulating, knock it off. For example, instead of saying, why can't you take the trash out on time? Which is not a real question, but more of a shaming, crappy comment about not being able to trust them to do the right thing. Better for you to say, hey, I need to know that you're going to take care of the trash, including paying attention to when it needs to go out. I just don't want to have to focus on that anymore, and I don't want to nag you anymore. That probably feels pretty shitty and disrespectful. So I statements, keeping it about you, letting them know about you, ball goes to them, they're in a place of choice. Now we have mutual respect. Now we have assertiveness. Being assertive also means boiling it down to your bottom line. Like, what will you tolerate in others and yourself? How about what you will no longer allow yourself to be subjected to? Now, notice I didn't say, I won't let them do that anymore, because that's controlling. No. It's what will I allow myself to be subjected to? Like, what do I show up for and stick around for? Like maybe yelling, shaming, controlling, or gaslighting. Maybe that you'll start setting boundaries and give others the choice to change or not. And if not, then you will decide what you will need to do next. Part of becoming more assertive is the desire to communicate in healthier ways, too. To be direct and not be passive-aggressive, like guilting or shaming or manipulating. I encourage you, don't discuss things with people until you know where you are and how you will need to choose, not them. Detach, detach, detach. Tell yourself, okay, if they do X, what is my Y? So figuring out your bottom lines and how you're going to handle things is 90% of it. Usually the reason why people melt down in a conflict or conversation is because of fear. They don't think they can handle it. Assertiveness is also about being respectful. Like I've said many times, most people swing the pendulum from compliant to jackass when they first begin speaking up. I think it's almost a defended stance, with a lot of I'll show you, or screw them, I'll tell them exactly how I feel. Eventually, you're going to start to feel a little bit ridiculous, so you work on not speaking, hopefully until you're calmer, more grounded. You've come to terms with the I've decided focus on yourself that we just talked about. That you're detached enough, like you've gone through all the grief work enough. You're not still in a place like, I can't believe they. You've done it enough to also be in a place of choice and to allow them to be where they are. That's not easy. That takes work. For example, when your sibling is procrastinating and holding you hostage by not getting back to you about their holiday plans, instead of reacting immediately with lots of emotion and chewing their head off, you calmly, after taking some time, Tell them your boundary. Like, hey, for whatever reason you can't decide by Friday, I'm going to have to go ahead and choose a date so I can make my travel plans and get my tickets. You're just letting them know that if for whatever reason, no judgment, it's not your business what they're doing, you're letting them know what you're going to need to do, and you give them a heads up. Sometimes that will influence a person's choice. Sometimes they'll say, oh crap, yeah, okay, right, it is getting late. Let me do something here. Either way, no one is a hostage any longer to the other's choices. And finally, voice work means no more over-explaining. So people who grew up being teased, shamed, questioned by their caregivers or other kids, perhaps, are going to feel the need to over-explain and thus justify what they want, what they need, what they're choosing, and why they're doing it, and all that. You don't. You don't need to do that. It's exhausting for you and for them. And ironically, it diminishes the power of your boundary. And guys, it's controlling. Come on, you're trying to convince them that it's a good thing that you're doing or asking for. Good boundaries are just give them the bottom line. And I also want to add, of course, it's a need to know basis. Like some folks do deserve more backstory, and it's appropriate that you share that with them. But don't do it compulsively out of fear, do it out of choice. Say to yourself, well, that's my partner. It probably is a good idea to share why I'm changing Christmas plans, right? But not my neighbor, who I don't know very well. So it's a case-by-case basis. Learn to say things like, I just don't want to do that right now, instead of all the 50 million reasons why you don't want to. That's your business, and it's TMI. Most people don't want to know. Or I won't be able to go with you. Or I just need some time for myself today. So practicing using your voice in a clear, authentic, calm, grounded, respectful way is a process. Wherever you are on that continuum of doing really well with that already to completely sucking at it or anywhere in between, as you do this work, you will see where you struggle. I always tell people, look around and try to emulate people who they really like how they communicate, whether it's your mentor, your neighbor, your sister, your partner, your best friend, a character in a movie, who cares? How do they do it and why does that appeal to you? Then try on some of those behaviors. When you work on assertiveness, you should have some really clear goals of how you want to be and feel. Writing down some very specific, not vague, because vague sounds lovely, but we can kick the can and never show up for it. You want to have very specific and intentional statements that I think will help both guide and motivate you in the coming months as to exactly what you want to work on and why. I always encourage my clients focus on one or two things at a time that are probably interconnected. That way it's more manageable, that change is more probable and sustained because you're going to do some serious work, some focused work on it. For example, maybe one of your goal statements is, I want to appear more confident and have better boundaries in my conversations. So what does that mean? Well, that means you're going to start working on your eye contact because you struggle with that sometimes. Maybe some deep breathing to keep yourself calm and some self-assurance even when you're a bit shaky, like, I can do this, I can tell them, it's okay. As for boundaries, your focus will be at the same time trying not to overstep, control, question, react, keeping your focus on yourself. So if you work on just those two things at a time, you will learn a lot. You will start seeing changes because you're really committed. And what I tell people all the time is the next things to work on are going to show themselves, trust me. They're going to show right up on your radar. As we get healthier, we notice more unhealthiness around us and within ourselves. And we notice the opposite, the healthier things. Healthy begets healthy. The work will turn you towards the other work that you need to do. So don't paralyze yourself by trying to name 52 things you're going to work on today. Then you don't even know where to start. Notice what is popping up, being problematic, causing problems in your relationships. The thing that keeps bugging you, start there. So today we wrapped up our month all about the necessary components for assertiveness and talked about examples of what that looks like, from setting boundaries to shushing your inner critic and looking at how not to react emotionally. We discussed making clear goal statements about how you want to change in the coming months, which I think in and of itself is empowering because you're choosing, you're owning, you're becoming, you're changing, you're transforming. Now, how powerful is that? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you got some good stuff this month. I still have one more slot for coaching. Hit me up on social or on the website if you're interested in doing some really fantastic one-on-one work. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.